Thank you very much. So we're here today to talk about raising the profile of social care, and we're going to go to our panellists now to start the discussion. Who would like to start?
Kick off on that if you'd like me to. I guess I think part of the reason that I've been invited to speak on this panel is that we've been fortunate enough in the last 18 months to be featured on national TV 9 times. So I've had the great pleasure of sitting on the red sofa talking to Charlie State and on Breakfast TV. One of my team actually did say she was a big fan of Charlie State and she would like me to get a lock of his hair. And I did say if I approach a national treasure with a pair of scissors, I'm probably going to get escorted from the building. Yeah, not really what I needed on my DBS. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So the work that we tend to do when we're talking to the media is, from my position anyway, is to try to redefine the role of carers in society. We're trying to reposition what is quite commonly the received wisdom of care work. And I think I did a piece with BBC News 24 about a year ago where we were talking at that point about the shortage of carers in the UK. The figure at that time was 140,000, as we all know. Subsequently, the figure is now 165,000 vacancies in adult social care. And the journalist that was interviewing me said to me, look, what do you think the problem is? I said, well, I think the problem is that if you describe this job to somebody that knows nothing at all about the sector, you've not got enough time to complete the work you need to do. You rush from place to place with very little time between visits and probably no pay associated with the time in between visits. You are overwhelmingly likely to be on a 0-hour contract. You may not see the same face twice because the consistency and continuity of that care run is down to the provider that you work for. Now, if you describe that job, not many people are prepared to do that job. So following the BBC Breakfast thing, and actually the week before I was on Breakfast, there was a piece with the Alzheimer's Society, a gentleman receiving a half-hour breakfast call for personal care, right? Surprisingly, not unsurprisingly, they didn't get him through his shower in half an hour. So the carer stayed for half an hour beyond the end of the visit and cut back to the studio, Charlie State and Nagel and Chetty applauding that amazing carer. Yeah. And I'm screaming at the telly going, she's just done half an hour's unpaid work, guys. We need to talk. So after my piece, I rang up Alison Holt, the BBC Central Affairs correspondent, and talked to her about that. So the problem here is that the BBC is part of the problem because they are not calling up and building organisations who recruit, usually from the sector.
Yes.
Which means you bring people in who've got legacy issues, they've got a reflex, a muscle memory which is not necessarily a healthy one.
No.
So we still had that management challenge to articulate it, I think. So I after about a year of growth, and we brought a couple of mid-managers into the pilot business, the original business. And I was finding that my approach and the approach of my registered manager when we started was maybe not quite what was happening.
Yeah, they weren't synergised.
Drifting a little bit from the core value, right? So I sat the team down and said, right, do me a favour, draw me a paper again. I'm an old guy, paper, right? Draw me an organisational chart for this business. And they all very dutifully put me at the top. Put the registered manager just below, and we had care manager and we had team leaders and caregivers, and so they had this typical hierarchical pyramid, right? I said, great, you're all wrong, but you're all wrong for exactly the same reason. Turn it around. If we are going to be truly a carer-centric organisation, I'm the least important person in the organisation. My caregivers are absolutely the most important people in the organisation. The challenge, though, is in the middle ground.
Yes. Because
you've then got a 15-year veteran care manager saying to me, you're saying to me, them carers are more important than me. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
But the good news is you're more important than me, because everyone's more important.
One of the biggest problems we have is retaining and keeping our staff in the sector, as we've discovered. So if we want to raise the profile to make it known, we know it's a great place to work, but we want people to have careers in care and know that it's a possibility. So how do we do that?
Okay, and I think we set up, from my perspective, we set out as an organisation to focus on that. Spend a lot of time pre-launch for the business looking at alternative ways of running social care business. I've been in social care for 12 years, so I had some exposure to other parts of the sector as well. But what struck me as strange when we started is that we were the first provider to come to market with a people-focused mission statement. Most care providers were focused on clients, client acquisition, service delivery, outstanding provision. They weren't thinking about their people in terms of the mission statement. They were clearly thinking about their people as an organisation, but it wasn't written into the mission. So we set out to do that. The vision for our organisation when we started was to be carer-centric. We've made our carers the most important people in our business. They're more important than everybody else. I will say to a client, my staff are more important than you are, because without the staff I can't service that client. So we set out that way, and what I would say is, from a sort of proof of the pudding perspective, some stats to go around it, the industry average staff turnover in domiciliary care is between 60 and 70%. So from 100 members of staff, you may lose 60 to 70 a year. My staff turnover nationally with visiting angels is 12%. So 88% of my team are with me for the long haul. Now what that gives you is a stable workforce, which means your capacity can grow, because when you recruit to grow rather than recruiting to replace. It also means your team are able to acquire the skills they need to do the complex care that we've already talked about. But in order to get to that place, you have to run your business very differently. You have to pay people really very well. We're paying up to £16 an hour for dom care workers. We're paying travel time as well as mileage. We're guaranteeing pay increases each year. We provide free life insurance to our carers. We service our carers' cars every 12 months. Yeah? These are all things which have a cost, and because they have a cost, equally that then has to play into the margin within the hours of care we provide, which means we cannot do commissioned work at 18, 19 or £20 an hour. So we just don't do it. Yeah? And you can say, well, it's easy for you to say that, Dan. When I started the company, we didn't have any work. We've now got in the region of 2,000 clients across the country. So we've grown phenomenally quickly by doing that. Yeah? I would argue, and we talked a little bit before we started, that if the root of all evil is money in this situation, that the amount that's paid, whether it's a local authority, whether it's a provider split billing and charging a private client slightly more, which is naughty, but they shouldn't do it, or whether it's a pure private case, the reality is if it's not economic to do it at £22 an hour, just don't do it. The councils will be left with no choice but to raise their rates if no provider was able to do it at £22 an hour or £20 an hour. Right? And it's down to us to value the service that we do appropriately. Because if we don't do that, the people that end up carrying the cans are the caregivers. Because it's the caregivers who are then subsidising the package if there's not enough money in it, by doing unpaid travelling, by not getting enough for the fuel to cover the cost of the mileage as they're driving around, by staying beyond the end of their visit and it not being charged for. These are all ways that a carer who is already not paid enough ends up subsidising a public funded package. Yeah? So I think that for me would be the start point on this year. The job has got to be more attractive, but the culture, the environment of the organisation that's employing that individual needs to be set right in order to encourage people to stay in the way. We're going to raise the profile of social care. The first thing we need to try and do is to dispel the myth that the BBC will articulate. You know, and every time the BBC broadcasts a piece of a young girl driving a Vauxhall Corsa, rushing around from place to place and not having enough time to complete her visit, people see that and go, I don't want to do that job. That job does not appeal to me. So if we're going to fix this thing, we need to think about making the job more attractive and actually promoting the positive impact that carers have and reframing the arguments on it. So that's probably what I'd say to start. Well, one of the really interesting things about the approach that we've taken is the focus that we have on looking after carers, who are caring people, right?
Yes.
That's what the profession's all about, right?
It's in the name.
It means they're really quite difficult. They don't self-identify as needing help.
Correct.
Problematic, right?
Yes.
So we've had to find clever ways of supporting people that actually do need the help, yeah? But when you give that love to a carer, it actually becomes reciprocal. You get a bridge coming back the other way. So our managers are supported then by the care team as well, right?
Yeah.
Because they recognise when their coordinator's not having a good week, when their supervisor's not having a good day, yeah? So if you give the love out, the love comes back. And I'm regularly, absolutely, I'm regularly criticised for talking about loving carers, and I absolutely mean it. I met a TV production guy in Liverpool about 2 years ago, and he was pitching me the idea that ended up going to air, which was a politician doing a home care. He had balls on,
we said no to
and you see,
of them.
superficial nonsense like that just does not do the job, because the perception is anybody can do it, right? Now, and the reality is that 20 years ago, the complexity involved in domiciliary care was indeed lower in most instances. What's happened over the course of the last 10 years, especially in the last 5 years, is the shortage of people in community-based support in the NHS means the work we are now doing is far more complex. And so if I hear a politician indicate, they never say it outright anymore, but indicate that care work is a low-skilled job, I'll say to them, just come and walk a mile in my shoes for a second. We took a referral, so we're based in Sheffield, our head office is Sheffield, so my original business is in Sheffield. Took a referral for a 57-year-old gentleman who had a massive stroke. He was supported in a residential nursing facility surrounded by people in their 90s because he was tracky, double peg, track hoisted and a cough assist machine. He wanted to be at home. He did not want to be in a nursing home because he was not an old man. Okay? We got him back home. When we took the inquiry, the social worker said to me, I'm going to speak to you about this, but I don't think you can do it. I said, why not? She said, because you're only social care. Well, I said, well, that's ridiculous. What does that mean? Have you got a sheet of paper in front of you? Got a blank sheet of paper in front of you? Yes. Right. Just write down the instructions to make a Sunday dinner, will you? She said, well, that's going to take me a long time to do that. So, yeah, it's complicated, isn't it, when you think about writing it down task by task, but presumably you managed to do it okay. Well, yeah, well, you do it because you were shown how to do it and then you repeat it on a regular basis. Why would I not be able to do that?